This is one of the things that is becoming a lot more popular. Whenever you're watching on TV, you'll see guys who are passing really nice deer because they're just not mature enough. And in the situation that we have here, we live in Pennsylvania, we have 50 acres, and we're managing our acreage for deer, and we actually do some maple syrup. And the deer that we have around here, a mature deer for this area is 3.5 years old. The reason for that is some of our neighbors aren't quite as picky on deer as we are, and that's one of the things that people will run into quite a bit if they have a small amount of property like we do, is you can't really control where those deer are going to go. You can't control how old they get to be, but one of the rules of thumb is dead deer do not grow. And that's one of the things that we've come to realize, and we're working towards more and more mature deer, and we're starting to see it start to pay off. So a good way to start if you have 50 acres or less is only harvesting deer which are 3.5 years old, and you can judge their age by the body shape that they have, the fullness of their neck. And while in rut, deer will look a lot bigger because they have a really swelled up neck. But if you get trail camera pictures during the summer, you'll be able to see that neck extending all the way down to their chest. And that's a 3-year-old deer. A 4-year-old deer will have a dip right behind their shoulders and a pot belly. That's one of the characteristics of a more mature deer. Okay, another thing that older bucks will look for is food, water, and bedding. And these are the things that we have going for us on our property. Is we have food, we have food plots, water, we have a stream running all the way down our property. In bedding, we have a 30-acre swamp on our property, and that is excellent for deer bedding. And also we have some timber which has quite a bit of brush, and the deer love to bed in there. But one of the things that gets undermined quite a bit, bucks have to have safety, or else they will not be in that area. You can do everything perfectly. You can have the food, you can have the water, you can have the bedding, but if that buck doesn't feel safe, he's not going to be on your property. And there's different ways to do that. When you're going into your property to check trail cameras, to check on your food plots, I actually, when I'm not going in to hunt, will make a lot of noise. That way I can actually warn the deer that I'm coming in. And some people won't agree with me on this, but deer, if they know where you're at, they don't get too worried. They'll run a little ways, but they'll stop just where they can hear you. And I've come to find that through many times of bumping deer and then watching them run out. And then if I'm making noise, they just stop and they watch me continue to walk on my way. And then if I look back, those deer will actually be moving right back into the place that they left. And so on our small property, I like to make noise when I'm going in just to scout. I like to access my property from the same place every time. And while that does sound like the deer will be able to pattern you, when you go in to hunt, you come in much quieter and you come in a different way. And that way the buck will have a false sense of security in his habitat and in his territory. But safety is definitely key. Does is another thing. During the rut, if you don't have does on your property, the bucks, they're not going to be there. You have to have does on your property, and that's one of the things that we have going for us. We have a small amount of property. We don't have a high deer density here in this part of Pennsylvania, so we actually let the does go. We don't hunt does on our property. We are blessed to have other people who need does taken off of their property, and we go to their property with their permission to take does. But on our property, we like to let them be. Let the does draw the bucks onto our property, and that has always worked out really, really well for us. I can remember the first time that I really hunted the rut. Throughout that season, I had seen does coming to the area that I was hunting almost every single day, and the rut started, and I can remember one of those days. It was an early morning. I actually harvested a deer later on in the day, but I saw 11 bucks, and they were in there because one of those does that had patterned to come on to our property had pulled all those bucks onto our property, and that was just a really cool thing to see. I was in the tree stand. I actually got in late, and I got into the tree stand, and I was seeing buck after buck after buck. I only saw one doe the whole day, and I saw a couple of really nice deer and quite a few young bucks. So that was just a good experience for me hunting the rut, and it's one of those memories that I hope will never go away. So does is definitely a key part. In some cases, there are too many does on a property. You can't keep up with them when it comes to feed sources, and in that case, you will need to harvest some does. But on the property that we have deer with here, with the deer density that we have, we choose to let the does go on our property. Low pressure is another thing that gets overlooked at some points. It ties into safety. When this is typically during rifle season, bucks will go to a place, say usually they'll end up in a swamp where they don't get pressured very much, and what we like to do is, on our property, we don't have a lot of property that we own, that we manage. We have properties around us that we have permission to hunt within 5 miles of us and 15 miles, but on our property we like to let it go as long as we can, unless we have a buck patterned, and that way we're keeping the pressure on our property lower than the neighbors. The neighbors will go in, they'll drive deer, they'll do tons of things that you don't want to do on your property, and they'll actually drive those deer into your property if you stay out of there. And that's one of the things that we've been very successful in doing, is we go in first week of rifle season, we're not even on our property because we're hunting a different part of the state, and it's turned out we come back the second week, the neighbors are no longer on their property, but the deer are still on your property. You sneak in, you get up in a tree. Believe it or not, I like to do some rattling. The deer, I've had experiences where I've rattled for like pretty much 10 seconds, and I've had bucks just running towards me. And I can remember the first time that I had that reaction. It was a really nice 3.5-year-old 7-point that came in, and he stopped 35 yards out in front of me, and I was shooting a recurve at that time, and I had my recurve in my hand, but it's just too far to shoot. And with the bow that I have now, I'll be able to reach out, but I'm definitely an archery hunter. Rifle season is I love to rifle hunt, but at that time I had my bow, so that didn't work out very well. So low pressure, leave it when you can, and then when the time is right, go in there, sneak in and sneak out. Try not to disturb anything other than rattling and different things like that. One of the things that I've found to be pretty useful is actually use of Google Maps. Google Maps allows you to go to satellite, and you can actually see the properties around you, which gives you an advantage in that you can see what you need to do to improve your property. If the properties around you are agriculture, not a lot of water sources, you know that you need to do something to create a water source and a bedding area. And in our area, it's mostly overgrown farmlands. Pennsylvania used to be a great farming state, and that has really declined over the last couple of years. And pretty much all the fields around us are grown up. They've been let go. They've turned into brush pretty much. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and we've planted quite a few food plots, and it's showing already. This year was the first year that we got really serious about it. We did some in the past and we've had success that way, but we really got serious this year, and we're seeing quite a few deer. Actually, I went in there the other day making a whole bunch of noise coming in to check my food plots, and there was 3 does out in the food plot, and that was in the middle of the day, and they could hear me coming. So that's another testament to when you're not going to be hunting, making a lot of noise, the deer feel very comfortable. But if you have ag around you, best idea is bedding and water. If you have our situation, feed and water pretty much is what you're going to be looking for. And pretty much the percentage that you want to look for on your property is you want to have quite a bit of your property pointing towards bedding. I really don't know the percentage that you'd want towards that. I would say at least 25% of it should be bedding, depending on how much property you have and how much resources that you have for that in the habitat that's already there, and also what's around you. On our property, it's really 50% bedding, and that has worked out really well for us because in the rut, the does who are in heat will go into the bedding, and they'll take bucks from who knows where all around us, and they kind of congregate around that bedding area, and that has real dividends when it comes to seeing deer and harvesting them and getting out of there without disturbing them. With feed, depending on how much agriculture is around you, 3 to 7% of your property really should be put into feed, and that's one of the things that we're continuing to work at on our property. Right now we have right around 2.5% of our property in feed, and we're going to continue to work at that this year. We got a good start on it. Last year we started at it. This year we're much better off than we were last year, and we're continuing to work at it. Hopefully by next year we'll be up to 7% feed. But your food plots you really need to place in areas that you can get into them and get out without disturbing deer. And in the early season I like to stay away from the bedding areas, let the deer congregate in there and be comfortable. And when it comes to rut, you can get to the fringes of that and overlook some bedding areas. Otherwise, really you want to stay out of the bedding areas. So that's really what's worked for me. That's about all that I'm going to cover in this video. But I hope that this talk has helped you in any way. These techniques and these situations have really helped me as a hunter to grow, and I've really been blessed to grow up in a family that is really pointed towards dominion taking in the outdoors, and I've really enjoyed growing to the point that I have in my understanding of the outdoors. I've had some very good mentors along the way, and this is just what I've learned. I'm hoping to be able to teach in some way with what I've learned, and I am young, so there's a lot more for me to learn, and just hopefully this will help you with your property, with your management, and You'll hopefully be seeing some better deer when you start to put these into practice. Until next time, remember as you go through the week to thank God for the blessings that He gives us, and also to spend time in His Word. This is Evan Grimm from Master Harvesters. Hoping you have a great week, and hoping we'll see you again.